In the winter of 2009, 5 years ago today, actually, a small blog in this country got a very big international scoop. It was February 2009, so that's just 1 month into the Barack Obama presidency, right? And while most people in this country were fixated on the free-falling global economy and whether the new president and his newly elected Democrats would be able to arrest that free fall and bring us back from the brink of depression, 3 activists here in the United States were making preparations for a big overseas trip. The blog in question, which is called the Box Turtle Bulletin, they got advanced word about this trip. And 5 years ago today, they posted this blog item. What they reported that day was that 3 American evangelical activists had been invited to attend a 3-day conference in Uganda in March 2009. The conference was being organized by a Ugandan anti-gay group, and these 3 American activists were scheduled to appear and speak at that conference. Now, it was unclear at the time what that conference was going to be all about exactly. But in March of that year, as expected, these 3 American evangelical activists traveled to Uganda, and they spoke at that conference. And they also participated in a number of follow-up meetings, which reportedly included members of the Ugandan parliament. Eventually, some undercover video recordings of the conference came out, and it became clear what exactly these American activists were up to over there. They were there, it turns out, to give this Ugandan group an American anti-gay perspective on the evils of homosexuality.
They say gays are born that way, and it has been proved. It's been proven that they're born that way. That is a lie. That's what's called a lie. It is not true. There is no definitive scientific study that has ever proved that homosexuality is innate.
These American activists traveled to Africa, and they urged the Ugandans they met with, including the legislators, to show, quote, zero tolerance for homosexuality. They presented all this quack evidence about how dangerous gay people are. They presented themselves as scientific experts on the subject. They claimed that people can be cured of being gay. And then they came back home. That trip to Uganda, again, took place in March 2009. 7 months later, this bill appeared in the Ugandan parliament, the Anti-Homosexuality Bill of 2009, otherwise known as the Kill the Gays Bill. The bill called first for a sentence of life in prison just for being gay. It called for a sentence of death by hanging for the crime of being gay and being HIV positive. You could be sentenced to 3 years in prison just for knowing somebody was gay and not reporting them to the government. The Kill the Gays bill landed with a thud on the world stage, and almost as soon as it did, the American activists who'd been in Uganda earlier that year urging zero tolerance for homosexuality, they were claiming that they were shocked by this legislation. They had nothing to do with it, and they opposed at least the capital punishment part of what was being called for in the bill. We did lots of reporting on this at the time, and we learned that even though these American activists were trying desperately to distance themselves from the Kill the Gays bill when it came out, prominent Ugandans who were aware of how that bill came to be were crediting those same Americans for helping with and inspiring the legislation. One prominent Ugandan priest who we spoke with said that members of the Ugandan parliament who were present at that March conference, they left those meetings saying they needed to draft a new law to deal with the homosexuality issue. We also learned that it was not just those 3 American activists who had a front row seat to what was happening in Uganda. Do you remember C Street? C Street is a swanky townhouse in Washington, D.C. that's run by a secretive religious group called the Fellowship, or the Family. Lots of conservative members of Congress from both parties are believed to be members of the Family, but they're pretty secretive. The Family mostly operates off the radar. The one thing they do that everybody knows about is that they run the National Prayer Breakfast every year in Washington. But other than that, they pretty much keep things as quiet as they can. That group, that American religious group, it turns out, has ties to the specific Ugandan legislator who introduced the anti-homosexuality bill. The man who introduced the Kill the Gays bill in Uganda is a member of the Family, yes?
Yes, it's a young member of Parliament, David Bahati, a rising star who has been over to the United States for our National Prayer Breakfast and has taken something of an organizing role in the Ugandan National Prayer Breakfast and has been involved with the Family for some time.
So the legislator in Uganda who introduced the Kill the Gays bill had ties to an American religious group, and American anti-gay evangelical activists had been actively lobbying legislators in that country that they needed to get tough on homosexuality in their society. Both of them, though, both C Street and the activists, they both swore they had nothing to do with the Kill the Gays bill. Well, the bill in Uganda eventually died after a wave of international outrage and condemnation. That 2009 bill was put on the shelf, but it did not go away entirely. At the end of last year, in December, the parliament in Uganda quietly took up that bill again, a revised version of the bill that doesn't include the sentence of death for being gay this time, but it does include lots of the other prison sentences that attracted so much international outrage years earlier. The Ugandan parliament passed this bill in December. And then earlier this afternoon, Uganda's president signed the bill into law, just like that. It calls for lifetime imprisonment for the crime of aggravated homosexuality, lifetime imprisonment for being in a same-sex marriage, 7 years in prison for attempting to commit homosexuality, up to 7 years in prison for promoting homosexuality. This bill at various times over the last few years has appeared to be dead, but today it officially became the law of the land in Uganda. Upon signing the bill, Uganda's president announced that homosexual behavior, quote, was learned and could be unlearned, which is, after all, something that Ugandan legislators have been told for years. 5 years, in fact, exactly. Hold on, there's more.